Right. Okay, guys. Good morning and welcome back. Hope you guys can hear me properly. Send me a thumbs up. I'm audible to you. Yes, right. Can you hear me? Send me a thumbs up. Yes. Okay. So today I'm going to continue the thing in here. You know, I'm going to we finished the error correction. So still we are discussing financial statements of a sole trader. We discussed bad debts and doubtful debts, which means allowance for impairment loss. Then, right? So impairment loss. So I think I have done the over provision and under provision. So let's do the other questions today, right? So only up to here. Then rest of the things I will cover upcoming week, most probably on Thursday, right? So then we can go to the big calculations and other things, right? So I will do the things on Thursday, right? So then we can cover it out, okay? Right. Then you know, right. So we finished now. I told you when it comes to like bad debts and doubtful debts, those are two things, right? And just remember, when it comes to bad debt means we are writing off the debtors as expense. Then the doubtful debt means, it's just a provision from the amount of debtors. It is our company policy. We identify whether, like, from this much, we can't guarantee whether they will continue the business, they will pay back in the to the business. So because of that, we identify as doubtful debt, whether there is a doubt whether they will pay or not, right? So I told you the thing, when it comes to the bad debt account debit, debtors account credit. When it comes to doubtful debt, doubtful debt account debit, provision for doubtful debt account credit. When it comes to the allowance method, bad debt, impairment loss account debit, debtors account credit. Doubtful debts also we debit to the impairment loss account. We credit the allowance for impairment loss account, right? Both bad debts and doubtful debt debit to the impairment loss account when it comes to allowance method, right? And I told you when it comes to the doubtful debt or the allowance for impairment loss, there can be shortage. Shortage means another word you can write in here. In other word, we call under provision. Under provision, right? Under provision. Under provision means opening is lesser, closing is higher, right? So opening is lesser, closing is higher means when it comes to the provision for doubtful debt or the allowance for impairment loss, if we think opening is closer, opening is 3,000, let's say closing is 5,000. This is a method called under provision, right? Okay. In this situation, we debit the provision for doubtful debt account. Sorry, we credit the provision for doubtful debt account. Then we balance both to the 5,000, and we debit to the doubtful debt account, right? That is the under provision method. Is it clear to say, right? So under provision method or the shortage, right? When it comes to the over provision method or the excess, which means in here opening is higher than the closing. If I take opening 8,000, think closing is like uh, 7,000. Opening is higher than closing, right? Now in here we write the 1,000 in the, this is provision for doubtful debt or the allowance for impairment loss account, right? Then we write 1,000 in here, provision for doubtful debt account. We credit the doubtful debt account or the impairment loss account. In that situation, if we take only the provision for doubtful debt and doubtful debt account, uh, Doubtful debt account is an expense account, but if we write credit side, so in here in this situation we deduct it from the distribution expenses because it's a over provision. Opening is higher than the closing. Am I clear to you? Send me a thumbs up. Right? We credit it. We might deduct it from the. Uh, we deduct it from the distribution expenses. Right? Okay. So in here I have given you another two exercise, a few exercises. Let's practice. Then you can have a clear idea about these things. Right? Let's go with this one. Let's start with question number exercise number 24, right? Let's start with exercise number 24. Your writing book, right? Exercise number 24. Exercise number 23, right? Yeah. 23, page number 12. Exercise number. I'll give the part 2 this week, right? 20. Page number 2. Page number. Page number. Hope it's clear to you, right? Page number 12. Let's see. What are the things? As of 31st March 2021, the trial balance information of Siripala business is as follows. You can see debtors of the trade receivables, provision for doubtful debt, or the allowance for impairment loss 60,000. Uh-huh. This is the provision for doubtful debt account balance, right? Additional information. Write off 50,000 as bad debt from debtors or impairment loss from the trade receivers. From the balance, made a provision 10%, to correct it as not as bad debt. In the tutorial, correct it as doubtful debt. Doubtful. Easy clear, you guys? Send me a thumbs up, right? Correct it as made a provision as doubtful debt, right? I'll change it in the tutorial as well. Video on karangin puluan nang ya. That's good. Can you hear me? Send me a thumbs up. Hope you can hear me, right? I'm audible to you, right? Correct it as doubtful debt, right? Okay. Yeah, let's see, right? Now, let's prepare it under both methods, right? I'll first of all, I'll prepare both the accounts first. Then let's go to the extractions, right? In here, I'll take debtors or trade receivables, right? Then, bad debt, provision for doubtful debt, and the doubtful debt. In here, trade receivables, impairment loss, and allowance for impairment, right? Debtors is an asset account. In another trade receivables also, debtors are both are same. Bad debts is an expense account. Provision for doubtful debt is an asset decreases account. Doubtful debts also is an expense. So impairment loss is an expense account. Allowance for impairment loss is an asset decrease. Right? Let's see. When it comes to the trade receivable, opening balances was 750,000. You can write. So opening or closing, there was a 750,000. මාසේ අන්තිම balance එක කොහොම හරි same thing 700. So what is the thing they are asking us to do? They are asking us to do made a provision for doubtful debt. Sorry, write off 50,000 as bad debt. So you need to write off 50,000 as bad debts, right? Okay. So write off 50,000 as bad debt. So when we write off 50,000 as bad debt, you know, we credit debtors account in here and we debit bad debt as debtors. In here, what we do? Impairment loss 50,000. Bad debts means impairment loss, right? Trade receivables 50. Now we deduct, right? I forgot to write now. Allowance provision for doubtful debt balance was 6,000. Then right, provision for doubtful debt balance was 50,000. Since it is an asset decreases account, balance comes under credit side. In here, this represent allowance for impairment loss 60,000. Right. Now next one, from the balance of made a 10% as bad debt. Now you know we identify doubtful debt from the rest, not from the 750. We identify once we deduct the bad debts. I told you, right? Bad debts කැපුවට පස්සේ ගානට තමයි doubtful debts අපි provision එක කරන්නේ. You know it's 700,000. EBF 700,000. From this you need to deduct, you need to identify 10%. 10% means how much? You know it's 70,000. BCD. From this we identify the 10%. Send me a thumbs up if it is clear. 10%. Understand? Which means 70,000. BBF 70,000. Now, is it a case of over provision or under provision? Can anyone tell me? Opening is lesser, closing is higher. What is this? This is under provision, right? By shortage, which means opening is higher, closing is lesser, right? Same scenario, you know, in here, from first of all, we balance here, you know, 750,000, 750,000, 700,000 BC. BBF 700. %, which means you know it's 60,000. BCD 70. BBF. How we identify, you know. Now you know in the case of under provision, you know, 10,000 we write it under here as doubtful debt. In here, provision for doubtful debt, 10,000. Then this is balancing up to 70,000. In here, 10,000 in here, impairment loss. Impairment loss. In here, 10,000 allowance for impairment loss. Is it clear to send me a thumbs up? Am I audible to you? Right? And hope you can remember I told you income and expense account not goes next year, right? So when we identify, දැන් ඔයාලට මේක මතක තියෙනවනේ මම ඊයේ කියලා දුන්නා. මේ 50,000 ගත්තොත් P&L කියලා දාලා we debit here and we debit to the P&L account. Send me a thumbs up. I want the answers. Easy, right? මතකද මම ඊයේ කියලා දුන්නා? Can you hear me? Right? Doubtful debts also, since it is an expense account, P&L කියලා 10,000 yeah. Right? දැන් මේකේ ගත්තොත් දැන් මෙතන 50 60 කියලා 50 10,000 කියලා 60 separately ගියාට මේකෙදි totally 60,000 we identify as P&L. Right? Finish it and raise two hands, then I'll show you the extraction. Finish it and raise two hands, then I'll show the extraction. Once you have done, raise your hands. Once you finish, raise your hands. කඳිල් ඉවරද තාම ලියනවද? right. Okay. hold on නා. තේරුණා නේද? ඒ හරි මිස් වෙලා වගේ. last week video එක බැලුවා. what happened? right. මේක ටික. right. Okay, let's see the uh, financial statements. අපි මේක Thursday හරි Friday හරි නේ කරේ. Friday නේද කරේ? Friday. ඒකේ part කලින් part. right. Okay. Now you know you need to do the extractions, right? So Friday make a calling part financial statements extraction, right? In both ways, financial statement extraction, right? Okay. Now if I draw P&L and SFP under P&L expenses, you know this both goes to the distribution expenses. Under assets, you know, we identify current assets. දැන්ට අහගෙන ඉඳලා පස්සේ ඒකත් බලන්න. ඒක බලලා මෙන්න. right. ඒක බලලා මේකත් බලන්න. right. Okay. Now you know in here, right? So when it comes to financial statement extractions, you know, debtors 700,000, right? Debtors 700,000. This way, allowance method we identify as trade receivables. Oh, ballen 700,000. We identify the closing balance, huh? After deducting the bad debt amount. Is it clear to say? Right? Then you know bad debt 50,000, it goes to the distribution. Bad debt 50,000. And doubtful debt 10,000. Right? But in here, you know, both bad debts and doubtful debts concerned as impairment loss, right? So impairment loss total 60,000. All right. Okay. Omega Dandana, impairment loss 60,000 totally we identify in here. Right? Now, when it comes to provision for doubtful debt, you know, closing balance it's 70,000, right? Minus provision for doubtful debt. 70. ඒක අඩු කරලා තමයි අපි debtors ලා ගාන ගන්න. 630. Easy creative send me a thumbs. This is allowance for impairment loss 70,000. Means 630,000. That is the total uh, debtors or the paid receivables we identify. Are you okay up to here, Senior? In here, just remember we identify the closing balances, right? Write it and raise your hands. Once you done, raise your hands. Huh? Sigma done.
සර්
Yes.
අර මේ කලින් ලිව්ව මේ ලෙජර් account එක චුට්ටක් පෙන්නන්න.
මොකද?
අර කලින් ලිව්වේ ලෙජර් accounting
ඔව්.
චුට්ටක් පෙන්නන්න. Okay, sir, done.
Done, right? Okay. So now next one, right? The same thing another way, right? Let's see. In this one also, this should be changed. Made a provision 10% as doubtful debt. As at 31st March 2024, trial balance information of the Amal business is as follows. You can see. Additional information: write off 150,000 as bad debt from debtors or impairment loss from trade receivables, right? So, from the balance, made a provision of 10% as doubtful debt or allowance for impairment loss. Show the relevant entries under both ways with the financial statement extractions, right? So, this is exercise number 24. 24, page number 12. right? So you need in here debtors account, bad debt, provision for depreciation, sorry, provision for doubtful debt, and the doubtful debt. In here, allowance method, trade receivables, impairment loss, and next one, allowance for impairment loss. But I'll show you the enough, give you the enough time to write. Now, if I draw the extractions, financial statement extraction, financial statements, extractions, cut and paste, right? Full under full, then exam, ledger accounts, then full paste, right? Okay, let's see, right? Next one. Now you know trade debtors balance 850,000, right? So trade debtors balance 850,000. So I'll write balance brought forward debtors 850. Here balance brought forward 850. Next one, provision for doubtful debt 85,000. Balance brought forward 85,000. Balance brought forward 85,000. Next one. Okay. Write off 150,000 as bad debt. So you know when we write off 150,000, you know this is credit, this is debit. In here also this is credit, impairment loss, 150,000, trade receivable 100. Then from the balance made a provision of 10% as doubtful debt. I ask you to correct it as doubtful debt. You know, as doubtful. Balance, you know, when it comes to balance, you know 850, 850, 700. Balance carry down, balance in here. You know, since this is an asset account, අනිත් ඒවත් BCD BBF යනවා. හැබැයි P&L එක ට්‍රාන්ස්ෆර් වෙනවා BBF. කිව්වා hope you can repeat. ඊයේ පෙන්නුවා 700,000 balance BBF ගිහිල්ලා තමයි income expense එකට P&L ට්‍රාන්ස්ෆර් වෙන්නේ. අපි අර එහෙම දාන්නේ නැහැ because it's cost. Right? From the balance made 10% as so 10% means how much? 10%. 10% means balance carry down 85,000 or 70,000. 70,000. 700,000 into 10% means 70,000. In here, from this balance carried, balance brought forward. Now we need, is this the under provision or over provision? This is the case of over provision. In over provision means excess of the over provision means opening balance is higher than the closing balance, right? So we call it as over provision, right? I told you over provision means opening balance is higher than the closing balance, right? Mostly got the වැරදි තැන් ටික මම අය හදන්නම්. Right. In here, now we write 15,000 in here as doubtful debt. In here, provision for doubtful debt 15,000. In here, 15,000 impairment loss. 15,000 allowance for impairment loss. Right? Okay. Sam digitalize with allowance for impairment loss. දැන් පොඩ්ඩක් පරිස්සම් වෙන්න ඕනේ. Right, just think. Now when we identify in here, you can see this is an asset account, expense account, asset account, but asset decreases. Expense account. Trade receivables, assets account, impairment loss, asset decrease. Right? Debtors we identify as 700,000. In here, both name trade receivables, doubtful debt balance, closing balance how much? Doubtful debt closing balance, provision, sorry, provision for doubtful debt closing balance, it's 70,000, right? In both. So we deduct provision for doubtful debt. Provision, since it asset decreases account, provision for doubtful 70,000. 600 in here, allowance for impairment loss 70,000. So it's 630,000, right? But when it comes to this one, bad debts 150, we write it as in here. Bad debt 150. But when it comes to the doubtful debt, though the asset every time, though the expense every time comes to the debit side, in here it recorded on the credit side. So, ඉතින් ඒක ඇත්තරම doubtful debt යන්න ඕනේ debit නේ expense එකක් නිසා. දැන් ඒක නිකන් income එකක් වගේ නේද? credit ගියා කියන්නේ. right? හැබැයි අපි other income වල දාන්නේ නැහැ. Instead of that we other income වල දැම්මත් ඉතින් හරි වගේ තමයි, but we do the minus in here. Send me a thumbs up if it. But in this situation we don't need to do like this. You know, these things goes to the P&L lah. මේක යනවා P&L 150. මේකත් යනවා P&L. හැබැයි income side එකට මාරු වෙන්නේ 15,000. But when we balance this one, මේකත් අපි P&L එකට මාරු කරනවා, but you know 150,000 minus 15, 135,000. ඒ ගාන තමයි P&L එකට යන්නේ. right? Kapara can write allowance for impairment loss $135, right? දැන් මේක එතන ලියලා මේක දාලා මේක අඩු කරලා ලිව්වත් ඉන්නේ 135. එහෙම දැම්මත් වෙන්නේ 100. Easy creative, send me a thumbs. This is both ways are the same answer. Right? Okay. Right from here, from the beginning and raise one, then I'll show the letter. Next. Right. Write the other slides as well. Raise.
Sir, please show that one again.
Sorry?
Sir, please show that one again.
Ehunne.
Sir, please show that previous part again.
Alright. Done?
Done, sir.
Right. This part, finish it and raise your hand. All right. Okay. Now this one done, one also done. Let's see. Exercise number 25, right? As on 1st April 2019 of Lucky's business, the balance in the provision for doubtful debt account was rupees 7,500. The debtor balance as on 31st March 2020 is 40,000. The debtor balance is represented by five debtors: Tashi 10,000, Tony 3,000, Tani 7,000, uh, Takishan 15,000, and Tina 5,000. A special allowance was made for debtors on 31st March 2000 as doubtful debt allowance. 15% of the total amount due from Tony, and allocation of 15% to Tashi, and 1,200 amount due from Thani, and 6% from the amount due from Tina should be allocated. Uh-huh. So what are the requirement? The amount should be provision as doubtful debt 31st March 2020. Provision for doubtful debt, like, right, right. So right. This is about special provision and general provision. Before moving to that, but I think that's only right. Okay. So I before moving to that, I want you to do this one because we have made this one. Okay. Uh, right. Shall we do 27 first about the thing? Then we can go to the special provision and general provision. I want to explain it. Right. Can you do 27? I'll give you few minutes. Is it okay for you? Send me a thumbs up. Can you do the 27? I'll give you five, like, I'll give you like 8 minutes. Do this, huh? Then raise your hand. Right. Shall we start? Right. Uh, Lang, Laka, Tikalaka, Lanka, Tikalaka, right. Lanka, Tikalaka. I don't know what the name is, right? Okay, right. So let's see, Lanka Tilaka's business, right? Let's take it as Lanka Tilaka's business, right? Okay. Uh, right. As on 31st March 2020, has a trade data balance of 50,000. At the end of the year, the doubtful debt provision 60,000 of the debtors recorded the adjustments to the doubtful debt provision account under each of the following scenario. Record the adjustments, right? So in here, if I take this one, you can see you can draw some workings under here, right? This one, right? Now you can see in here, clear money. In here, you can see if I take the doubtful debt, they have not given any opening balance at the end of the year. Doubtful debt provision is 6%, right? Trade 50,000 is the debtor balance. From that, we do 6% provision, right? Which means 3,000, right? So in here, which means provision for doubtful debt, uh, the balance is 30,000, right? Let's see. So you need to write it. Let's see. Right. Let's see now in here. If there is no opening balance in the provision for doubtful debt account, which means no opening balance, right? So effect on the provision for doubtful debt account. Provision doubtful account effect, impact on profitability, effect on the uh, debtors, right? Now if there's no any opening provision, we transfer doubtful debt 30,000 in the doubtful debt කියලා 30,000 doubtful debt account එකට debit වෙනවා, right? So in here, right, the effect on the provision for doubtful debt account, right? Provision for doubtful debt account, we can identify 30,000 effect on provision for doubtful debt account. We can identify 30,000 PBF value, right? So we can write like 30,000, right? From here we transfer, uh, identify. Normally, the PBF balance is 30, right? This is not over provision or under provision, anything, right? So, transfer 30,000 to doubtful debt, right? Impact on profitability. Profitability decreased by 30,000. Why? Profitability means the profit, because we transfer 30,000 from here to doubtful debt account. Doubtful debt account will decrease the profit. Effect on profitability, debtors also decrease by 30,000. From the year end value, we identify debtors also decreased by 30,000, right? There was a balance of 2,000 in the provision for doubtful debt account. Now, in next situation, they are telling, first situation done. Now, if you need, you can write the working under any place, right? All clear? Of 30,000, sorry, it should be 3,000. You not 30,000. I mean 3,000 meter lila meter 30,000. How the money? This should be 3000. Right? Then 3000, if this is 3000, this is goes to 3000. Doubtful rate. Easy creative, right? Send me a thumbs up. Right. Hope it's clear, right? Now, next one. In here it says, they are saying like that. If there is a 2000 opening balance, if so, this is the situation of under provision, right? This is the situation of under provision, right? So, effect on the provision for doubtful debt account, uh, BBF closing, එතනවාට ඕනනම් නිකන් BBF කිව්වම දෙකම එනවනේ. So, ගෙමෙතින් closing balance 3000, same, right? මේකෙත් එහෙම තමයි තියෙන්නේ, වෙනසක් වෙන්නේ නැහැ. Closing balance 3000. හැබැයි එතන under provision. Under provision. Transfer only 2000, transfer 1000 to doubtful debt. Hey, transfer 1000 to the doubtful debt. You can see in here. He transfer 1000 from here to doubtful. Right? Doubtful debt. Easy clear, right? Now, because of this one, profit decreased by only 1000. Right? Doubtful debt we identify only 1000. ඊළ ගියාව දැන් මේ අවුරුද්දේ 3000ක් නම් provision එක කරන්න ඕනේ. කලින් අවුරුද්දේ already 2000ක් provision කරලා තියෙන this is the provision. Provision කරලා තියෙනවා නම් අපි මේ අවුරුද්දේ තව 1000යි expense එකක් විදිහට identify කරන්න ඕනේ. Right? So, debtors decreased by 3000. Same thing, right? හැම අවුරුද්දෙම මේ හැම වෙලේම එකම වෙන්නේ. Right. All good, right? If you need more time, let me know. I'll show you later. Now, next one. There was a balance of 2000 in the provision for doubtful debt opening. දැන් මෙතන මේ දීලා තියෙන්නේ, right? March 2020 March 31st. So 2019 April 1st means opening balance, right? In next situation, they are telling, in the case if there was a balance of 2000 in the provision for doubtful debt, and මෙතන how much it's we did the second one, කලින් කරා number 3. if there was a 3,800 in the provision for doubtful debt, ඒ කියන්නේ මෙතන opening balance එක තිබ්බොත් 3,800, right? This is the case of over provision. Opening is higher than the closing, you know, right? So we identify 800 in here and transfer to the doubtful. Doubtful debt account a credit යන. කියන්නේ අතන ඔයාලට මතකද expense එක අපි minus කරලා දාන්න. doubtful debt credit වෙනවා කියන්නේ expense account එකට credit පැත්තේ යන්නේ. Right? So if so, you know, closing balance same, it's 3,000. Closing balance same 3,000. Closing balance 3,000. Right? This is a over provision. Over provision. Provision. Transfer 800 to doubtful debt. Credit side. When it comes to impact on profitability, profitability increased by 800. Expense again minus increased by 800. Other income එකක් දැම්මම තේරුණාද? Debtors same thing. Closing balance again අපි debtors ලා අඩු කරනවා. Debtors ලා decrease by 3,000. Right? If there's a balance of 3,000, next one. Right? Opening balance එක 3,000 තිබ්බා නම් මොකද වෙන්නේ? Provision එකක් කරන්න දෙයක්. Doubtful debt account වලට කීයක්වත් යන්නේ. Right? Opening නිකන් closing 30 නම් closing balance also 3,000. Right? No impact. Profit, no impact. But when it comes to debtors, decrease by 3,000. And debtors lage antim balancing adu kar decrease by 3,000. Right? Finish it and raise your hands. All done? Mahar Vishnu. Once you finish, raise your hands. If you need more time, let me know. వాళ్ళ ఇంటికి పెన్నన్న ఉన్న మెసేజ్ చేద్దాను మమ్మ పెన్నన్న. Right. Okay. Easy creative, send me a thumbs up. Right. Then we need to do the single account and the other things, right? So about general provision and the other things, I will cover next these things and other dates. We need to do about special provision and the general provision. And you know another thing, that if there's situation, maintaining a single account for writing off bad debts and provision for doubtful debt. For both, we maintain the single account, right? Yeah. So these are the things. Writing off a bad debt is considered as doubtful debt. It's a bad debt. If the bad debt considered as bad debt in the previous year, written off as bad in the current year, the amount should be debited to the provision problem instead of debited to bad. I'll explain this one these next week. Okay, so about these things, and pending things are depreciation, so it's easy. Then EPF, ETF, and VAT. Most probably these things will be covered on upcoming Thursday. Everything, rest of the things, depreciation, EPF, ETF adjustments, and the VAT. Are you okay up to here? Right? All the things will be covered in this upcoming Thursday. Right? Okay, let's meet on. Right? Why? What happened? Right? So you can refer the recording. Right? If not, we can't cover it. Some guys are having upcoming school term test. Okay, that is the thing. So uh, that is the thing. So just refer the recording. I'll upload the recording. Let's meet. I'll update the group with the plans. Thank you for the participation. Bye.
Sir,
God bless.
sir,
Bye.
sir,
Yes.
මේ මොකද්ද සැටර්ඩේ සන්ඩේ එන්න වෙන්නේ නැහැ ක්ලාස්.
හරි හරි අවුලන්නේ. ඩබල් එඩි නේද?
ඈ
රයිට් අවුලන්නේ. රෙකෝඩ්. කිස් ටික බා. රයිට්.